Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be talking about the Toothrow Sharktooth armor. The Toothrow Sharktooth armor is interesting because it has some, well, interesting effects. And as we go over them, maybe you'll be interested in that for a lower level character. At level 48, it's basically a mid-tier item, right entry level into Nightmare difficulty. So as you get into Nightmare difficulty, this is going to be an army that you can put on, usually when you're fighting Andoriel in Nightmare difficulty. It has 888 defense on it, which is relatively high. 103 strength requirement, which is relatively low for a 888 defense plate. Level 48 requirement, which is not bad. And 40% chance of open wounds. Pretty massive percent chance of open wounds. Open wounds is a scaling bleed effect, which only affects a monster who has HP missing. So if they are at 100%, it won't work on them. It does a bleed for 8 seconds based on your character's level for damage. So the higher your level is, the more damage it does. It has 220% enhanced defense, and it does vary from 160 to 220%, so a pretty large variable there of 60%. I also forgot to mention that open wounds, of course, prevents the monster from regenerating when it is in effect. So during those 8 seconds, the monster cannot regenerate. It also has plus 60 flat defense, which does vary from 40 to 60, and it also has a bonus strength of plus 10, which might help you put on a shield or a helmet or a weapon, depending on what kind of characters you are. You also get 1% off weapon ED, enhanced damage, for every 1 point of strength, so 10 strength equals 10% off weapon ED. We get 15% fire resistance, which really isn't a lot, but it's not like I'm going to turn it down or anything. And attacker takes damage of 20 to 40. 40 attacker takes damage is actually a lot, and maybe in normal difficulty it might actually kill some things, but in Nightmare difficulty, not so much. Attacker takes damage of has always been a rather lackluster stat, but 40 is a lot as far as attacker takes damage goes. Maybe with the way that they're fixing Thorns now, combined with Thorns, maybe in a Thorns build, it could possibly have some sort of interesting way to work that in. You can also find this in the ethereal form, and in the ethereal form it has 1,304 defense with a 93 strength requirement and level 48. This ethereal version could make a really nice mercenary armor, so that your mercenary has a very nice amount of open wounds applied when he's attacking, which is definitely nice to prevent monsters from regenerating. That way your mercenary is being more useful than just a tank. And this armor can be upgraded, and to do that, you're going to need a Lem Rune, a Co Rune, and a Perfect Diamond. And this is unfortunately going to increase the strength requirement on it quite a bit, so do keep that in mind as you think about whether or not you would like to upgrade this. You may also be better off spending that Lem Rune on something like a Treachery, which just in general sometimes is the better choice. But let's upgrade it, and let's see what kind of defense we get, what the level requirement goes up to, and what the stat requirements go up to. So right off the bat, we have an armor, which is 888 defense, 103 strength, level 48, which goes to the Kraken Shell of 1,416, not bad, 174 strength requirement, which is pretty high, and a level requirement of 68, which is also pretty high. I'm not really quite sure that is worth it, but the defense did upgrade quite nicely. Let's check the ethereal version, and let's see what the ethereal version upgrades to when it is upgraded to the Kraken Shell. So again, we're going to need a Lem Rune, a Co Rune, and a Perfect Diamond. And this one is going to upgrade from 1,304 defense, 93 strength, level 48, to 2,469 defense, not bad at all, 164 strength requirement, and level 68. Now the issue with this being ethereal is that to use it you would have to put a Zod Rune in it, which is probably not something that you would want to do. But you could potentially use this on a mercenary to good effect. The 40% open wounds could certainly be nice to help, like I said, prevent monster regeneration. Maybe socket it with a 15% IAS jewel, and I don't know. I do feel like the Lem Rune requirement is a little high to get this to its high defense, and The variables on the defense of 162, 220%, and 40 flat defense, 260 flat defense, kind of make the defense on this a little bit more variable than you would think, especially considering that that 200,469 is probably the high end, whereas we're probably looking at maybe like as low as probably like 1900 on the bottom end. So keep that in mind if you think about that for defense as well. I just don't really think this one is worth upgrading it to the upper tier. Usually by the time you hit level 68, you've got better pieces of equipment than this, and it's not really something that you're looking forward to. I have actually used this several times, though, for the open wounds, specifically on uber kills and things like that, just as a stopgap measure so that I had open wounds on a character that I didn't otherwise have open wounds on. And if that's what you need it for, 40% open wounds is a lot, and it's more than enough to be effective in that particular category. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any real resistances on it. That 15% fire is just not enough. And it needs some other stats besides just the open wounds. I mean, the high defense and open wounds is really all it has. If you want to define this particular armor, we can look up and we can see where specifically this might drop. So let's take a look over at Silo's Pen real quick, and we'll have a look and see what kind of places you can go to find this item, specific monsters you could potentially farm. So let's start out with bosses, and we're going to pretend we have about 150% magic find, and sort by probability. So it does look like, as far as non-quest kills, Nightmare Bale is your best chance, and Hell and Dariel is your second best chance. I think Hell and Dariel would be easier to farm than Nightmare Bale, but it depends on your resistances. Diablo in Nightmare, that's a quest kill, though. Not a lot of good choices here as far as bosses are concerned. Let's take a look at Super Uniques. Cow King in Hell, 1 in 2,377 is not bad. A lot of really crappy probabilities here. The Cow King in Nightmare is not a bad choice. He's not too hard to farm. Rockanishu in Hell and Stony Field, Treehead Woodfish, Woodfist. Those are actually, Bishy Boss, Rockanishu, and Treehead Woodfist are actually pretty good targets to farm just in general for Magic Find. They have a very high probability of dropping the Harlequin Crest Shaco. So you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone on this, and you could try and farm both of those. I just don't really see a lot of these targets being good for somebody who specifically wanted to try and find this on level, though. A lot of these are just kind of not good farming spots for a character who is probably in Act 2 Nightmare or something along those lines. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos. If you're interested in the Toothrow Kraken Shell, there are probably character builds that would specifically like to have this, but it is a rather generic plate. There's nothing that specifically ties it to any specific kind of class, with the exception of the open wounds, and the open wounds would be tied specifically to melee and ranged characters. Other than the melee and ranged characters, there's really no qualifiers on this that would make me say it's good for this particular build over this particular build or anything like that. It's really just a generic plate that gives some nice open wounds, and if you need open wounds, then use it. And if you don't need open wounds because you have it from other sources, then don't use it. So don't get your teeth all up in a row. That's a terrible joke. Don't get your teeth all up in a row. It's terrible. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.